The Niger is a tenacious river. It rises from the mountains of Conakry in Guinea, and instead of flowing into the sea, like all rivers do, it heads towards the desert. It seems to choose its own erratic desert, one that defies the laws of gravity and geography. Its waters seem to run for kilometers towards a definite end. But then, near Timbuktu, and without prior notice, the river turns, making a sharp curve to avoid the desert and flow into the sea. The Niger has given in to man's logic, as if its resistance was nothing more than a concession to the whims of cartography.
My name is Fanta Diallo. I am 21 years old and I am in my first year of law school at the National School of Administration. My dream is to go to France next year to study. I dedicate my time to trading between Bamako and Timbuktu in order to help pay for my education. I am trying to get a scholarship, but it is not easy since they are usually granted to the children of government officials.
Fanta Diallo has been working for 2 years in order to save enough money to pay for the expenses of her trip to France. During the rainy season, the Niger River acquires the water level needed by the big barges to travel up and down the river between Bamako and Timbuktu. During this time, which lasts about 4 months, Fanta makes between 8 and 10 trips, which at the end of the season should secure her enough money to cover her first expenses. Fanta has tried other jobs, but none of them have been so profitable as trading down the river. She has worked as a waitress and earned about $65 a month. She also worked at the home of a foreign diplomat, but her salary was not even $55 a month. Trade requires investing, but she has the support of her father, who has stood behind her from the very start.
I usually get up early, at sunrise. First, I make the beds, and then I make breakfast for my father and younger brothers. When I have class, I leave for university, but now I am dedicating my time to preparing my river trips.
Fanta's family is made up of her father, 2 brothers who are married, 3 younger brothers, and the 2 wives of her father.
Since childhood, Fanta has always shown intelligence and has always known what she wanted. I never had the means to provide her with an education abroad, but she is fighting for it, and I know that she will achieve her goal. When she was in high school and would bring her grades home, she was always the first or second best of her class. I need to make sacrifices so she will always be among the best.
Cheikh Diallo's job also begins early in the morning. His European boss exports handicrafts and other local products, which he sells in stores. Cheikh is not only his boss's personal chauffeur, but also acts as his contact with suppliers when he's in Europe on business.
The case of Cheikh Diallo is a rare one in Africa. Normally, a father works hard for the benefit of his son and gives him financial support. But Cheikh has chosen his daughter Fanta, who receives all his savings so that she can make a life for herself. There are other Africans that understand the key to the modern world and take a chance on women as equals. This helps take away the horror, war, hardships, suffering, hunger, and plagues of Africa.
In Bamako, the recycle market occupies an area equal to 5 soccer fields. Fanta goes to other markets by herself, but she prefers to go to this market accompanied by her father. Recycling is an African invention. In the industrialized world, it's a resource, but in Africa, it's a necessity. An object never dies in Africa. It's transformed. It is reincarnated as other objects and is something that lasts forever. A car, for example, will only end up at the Bamako recycle market after it has fulfilled a long life in a noisy European city. Just as it seems that a car can barely run 1 more kilometer, it is sent to Africa, where it is unveiled by art of magic, so that this old heap can offer 20 more years of useful life. Once expired, the body is sent to the market, where it undergoes a thorough dissection. Each group of blacksmiths, according to their status, is in charge of a restructuring phase. There are groups within each group of men who are anchored to metal. Those who make contact with fire are in a higher category than those who are responsible for banging the sheets of metal. Those who work with pieces of copper or heavy metal are respected more than those that work with tin. And little by little, without barely any transition, the car becomes a wheelbarrow. The star product at the Timbuktu market is the coal burner that is recycled from cans and the remains of the doors of the trucks that are abandoned along Mali's roads. For an item like this, in the north, Fanta can get 3 times the price of what she paid in Bamako. Fanta has spent the last 2 years contacting European universities and students in order to find a reasonable option she can afford. The arrival of the internet in Mali has allowed her to make these contacts with no trouble at all. Fanta has become an agile net surfer with friends and contacts who live all around the world. Obtaining a visa is one of the main problems for Fanta, as well as for other Africans who lack the means of support in order to study abroad. Not even an excellent academic record can guarantee the processing of a visa or access to scholarships that usually fall in the hands of the children of high government officials. The Kankan Musa is one of the 3 boats that, upon the arrival of the rainy season, travels up and down the Niger, connecting Bamako and Gao. Along the trip, the boat makes stops in Sego, Mopti, Timbuktu, and dozens of small river villages where passengers and goods get on and off. The arrival of these big barges from Europe dates back to colonial times and is related to the construction of the railway that joins Dakar and Bamako. The intention of the French colonial government was to unite the Niger Basin and the Atlantic Ocean in order to allow for the regular flow of trade and mail between Europe and the hot lands of Western Africa. Upon acquiring independence, the railway, as well as the barges, continued to operate, and they still do. But today they drag on in a dreary and decadent way, seized by a sleeping sickness that seems to be forever installed in the peaceful heart of Africa. On the river, time is an illusion of the mind. On the Niger River, time does not flow, nor is it transformed. It does not run or pass. It does not try to deceive the future. It is not divided into seconds, nor is it lost or avoided. On the Niger River, time simply does not exist. The Niger is the home to the genies of the water, invisible beings that control what happens on the river. They travel through the water without respecting jurisdiction, guardians of the absence of time, punishing and protecting those who come close to the river. The genies possess a knowledge that embraces the sciences of the earth and water, the medicinal properties of plants, the movements of the stars, the passions that move man, and the internecine struggles of the gods. They hold the key to the science of life on the river and the inviolable relationship uniting this world to all other existing worlds. Because on the river, there is no past or future, but a perpetual today that is eternally repeated under the rule of the genies. The Kankan Musa is the best preserved of the 3 barges that still cover the Gao-Bamako route. It is divided into 4 classes. First class has double sleeping cabins. Second and third class have multiple cabins. And fourth class passengers sit on deck, sharing space with the cargo. Most women traders travel fourth class down the river. It's a common scene that has repeated itself on the Niger since man can remember. Women have taken care of the small trade business, buying here and selling there on a traveling merry-go-round, up and down the river. Independent women travel with merchandise and children, surviving with everything on their backs in a non-stop nomadic lifestyle. 2/3 of the passengers are women, and more than half of them travel fourth class. Some travel for personal reasons. Others live on the boat to take care of the cooking or are in charge of the upkeep of the deck, while still others, like these friends of Fanta, dedicate their time to trading on the river. Asitan Koulibaly is 22 years old, while Kamara Traoré is 36 and has constantly traveled between Bamako and Timbuktu for the last 20 years.
This is a toothpick. People use it to take care of their teeth. It comes from a tree that is impossible to find in Timbuktu, which is why we take it there to sell it. It is used to clean teeth, and it also smells good. This is cassava. It is also impossible to find in Timbuktu. You can eat it raw as well as cooked. This is cucumber. Everyone knows how nutritional it is. It also does not exist there. This is taban, which both children and adults enjoy. It has the same properties as a lemon. It is used in baby formulas to add acidity like a lemon does. Here we have peanuts, which the people in Timbuktu love. You can eat them fresh or roasted and with tea. We also use them to make wonderful sauces. We call bananas tiga dege, a fruit that is impossible to find in Timbuktu. Here is an eggplant, which all tribes use in their meals and which everyone calls ngoyo. We like spicy food, and it has always been said that ngoyo is the antidote for hot spices. As for the coal, it's for the passengers to make their own food, as well as for those who prepare tea.
The Kankan Musa makes its first stop at the big city of Ségou on its way to Timbuktu. The journey from Bamako to Timbuktu takes 1 week, but only if the boat does not run aground or the engine doesn't break down, causing a delay of several hours or even days. Kankan Musa is the name of the boat and also of the most renowned of the Bambara kings who managed to create a black empire on the banks of the Niger River. Ségou was its capital. Today, the Bambaras are the people who hold power in Mali. They are farmers who have always lived by the river. Their stomachs and myths are nourished by it. And from here, the city of Ségou, Kankan Musa set sail in the 14th century to take part in the most famous pilgrimage to Mecca of that time. For centuries, that journey has been the object of legendary tales. They say that the king left the city with a caravan of thousands of courtiers, and he carried so much gold with him that while passing through Cairo, he left the value of that precious metal teetering. With the arrival of the French, Ségou became the bureaucratic center of the colony. Since then, it has lost its force and has plunged into a pleasant sleepiness from which it awakens when the market is open. The small town of Kalabubu is located near Segu. In this town, since long before anyone can remember, women have dedicated themselves to making and selling ceramics. They do not have a cooperative or receive any special aid. They themselves are a cooperative with their own rules and a unifying way of distributing obligations and rights. They also represent the most traditional vision of the Bambara society.
To craft ceramics, we have to go to the fields for the clay. It's a special clay that we get out of a ditch. We mix it with a little henna, pieces of old broken pots, and water. When the paste gets thick, then we begin to make bowls. We have different kinds and sizes of molds that allow us to make the bowls in any form we want. It's an exhausting job that does not bring in a lot of money. Once they are dry, we cover them with a liquid made out of clay mixed with water and red dye. Then we carry out the firing process. Previously, we would have gone for the wood. We collect it outside of town and we carry it on our heads. We also use dry grass so that it catches fire. Pottery making is an exclusive task for the women who belong to the caste of the blacksmiths.
The caste of the blacksmiths is a very special one within Bambara society and within most traditional African societies. They possess the secrets of iron and fire. Like magicians with powers to make weapons and farming tools to their liking. Blacksmiths and their wives were and are considered an impure caste, but one that is feared and respected as faithful guardians of the pillars of tradition.
Polygamy is not a problem here. Because if you take into account the amount of work, there is no woman who could do it alone. So it is better for a few women to share the home of a man. We do not have any difficulties living with other wives. We help each other mutually. I am not against clitoral excision. And if a girl were to be born tomorrow in our village, we would carry it out. There is nothing wrong with it. On the contrary, it is a tradition that has existed from before I was born. Why should we stop doing it if there are no problems?
Every Monday, Aminata and her friends go to the market in Segu to sell the ceramics that they have made during the week.
To make pottery, we are divided into 4 groups because we are too many women for just one group. The money that we earn from the sale of the bowls is used to solve personal problems. We also use it to help the most needy members of the group. We do not have a bank account to save our money. Each one of us has her money that she manages with her husband. When there is a family ceremony, we use this money. This is the only activity that we have. There are times when it is profitable and others when it is not.
Women's rights? I wonder if women in Mali have rights. It is true that Mali has signed the international conventions in favor of equality between men and women, but honestly, the situation is different. In Mali, rights are created to suit men. They are the ones that have all the power, and women are behind them. They monopolize everything. That's where we really are. It is true that polygamy is an African reality, but I personally have never been in favor of it. I do not think that the willingness to marry several women and to have so many children is good, especially not for the children who are the ones that suffer most. First of all, there is a lack of affection from the father, since he cannot attend to all his children equally, in spite of the fact that the Quran says it should be that way. But I do not believe that a man can love several women the same. We only have one heart, and a man will always have his favorite while the rest of the wives suffer. Polygamy only leads to trouble. Excision, or female genital mutilation, has always been taboo. Europeans think that this is a barbaric custom. I don't think that it is barbaric, but I do think that it is harmful to women's health. It makes us sexually useless, which is why I'm against it, not because it is barbaric.
Mais si c'est néfaste pour l'être humain, ça je suis contre.
The women who trade on the river do not sell all their merchandise in Timbuktu, but rather they sell some things that they buy in Bamako along the river, and at the same time buy other products and sell them too. For these women, the journey is not a way of reaching a paradise called Timbuktu. The trip is the end in itself, an excuse to reinvent the world each day. The women do not want to reach Timbuktu, they just want to travel, to slowly approach a city that, in their eyes, has never been laden with mysteries. For the women traders of the river, Timbuktu is nothing more than what it has always been, the capital of the distant north, the last stop of a path strewn with promises of commerce. In the mind of someone who has never been to Timbuktu, the city is not a place, but an idea, a magical word that opens the chest of mystery and desire for adventure. For the river inhabitants, it was only a place where the caravans crossing the desert would end, the strategic point where gold from the southern mountains would arrive to be traded for salt. For the rest of the people, it was a place paved with marble, a magnificent city with palaces of gold and ivory. This city never existed. Gold would come and go, but never stayed. It would leave for the north in the caravans that one day also stopped coming to this meeting point. The Kankan Musa sets sail again. It travels on, knowing that it will only find sand, heat, and decrepit walls, with aspirations of mysterious architecture in Timbuktu. The Kankan Musa is aware of this, but it sails on anyway, attracted by the power of the names whose spirits do not disappear. It is euphoric, caught under a spell before the proximity of the last frontier, which transcends the whims of time and space. A place that has been dying for 3 centuries, yet holds on, sustained by some strange force that gives it the need to exist.
My name is Mahaman Traore, and I have been a pilot for 32 years. The biggest problem we have with the boat is that there are no replacement parts. We need to get new equipment and spare parts in order for this job to be easier. We only use our instincts and experience to guide us.
We constantly run aground because we do not have sonars or anything to warn us that we are headed towards shallow waters. If we could dredge the sand from the river, or if they were to build the Tosaye Reservoir, we could work at least 6 months a year.
Years ago, the water level was very high, and we could sail for months. But now we can only sail for 3 or 4. And half of the time, we are still sailing in very poor conditions.
We could not do anything for 8 months. The solution is to buy new equipment and to dredge the river. This river is our life, and the life of all the people who travel with us. Any possible future for our children depends on it.
Mopti is the Malian symbol of a new age, disproportionate and full of life. Before the colony, it was nothing more than a small Bozo fisherman's village, of no importance at all compared to the big cities of Yene and Timbuktu. The French created Mopti in order to take power away from the local chieftains of these cities and to take advantage of its position on the river, halfway between Bamako and Gao. They built the dock and jetty in order to make it the most important river port. The arrival of the railway in Bamako in 1904 activated trade along the river. Big European companies established trading posts, buying feathers and rubber, and later wool and leather and goatskins. After the colony, these products were no longer exported. Today, Mopti is the heart of the country's interior trade along the river. Everything that travels up or down the river, men as well as merchandise, passes through this city. The city is growing day by day. Currently, there are approximately 800,000 inhabitants, and it continues to grow due to the constant influx of people abandoning the rural areas to avoid the droughts, floods, and plagues. They look for work in any of the new trades that the city promises. At the port, all activities are frenetic. There is a building in Mopti called the market, but they do not need one, since the entire city is a huge market that services everything that enters and exits the inlet, where the big canoes called binathas dock. Everyone is selling something, and there is always someone buying odds and ends. Or spices, livestock, vegetables, dried fish. Trade is constant and free-flowing. Like yesteryear, salt blocks arrive from the far corners of the desert, although not by camel, but now in the big barges that live on the river. In Mopti, the day goes on filled with sweat, the sweat of those who briefly come ashore and of those who shuffle around the port loading and unloading merchandise. The sun of Sahel has no measure, making its light a deformed madness. But then the afternoon slowly arrives without warning, playing with the colors of the sunset in an old-fashioned way. This is how sunsets should always be. Like those on the Niger, no cement horizons negating the moment. With a giant copper-colored sun that sits for only 1/100th of a second over the line of the river. Near Mopti, along the curve of the Niger, you will find the Bozos, the traditional river fishermen. They were the owners of Mopti, but growth and development made them lose control of the city. First, the French arrived, then the sedentary Peul, then the Dogons who came down from the mountains. Later on, the Bella slaves, who were freed by the Tuaregs, also came. Songhai and Bambara groups joined them, creating a display of ethnic exuberance unknown to man at that time. The Bozos were pushed to the banks of the river.
My town has been a victim of immigration and drought. We used to fish with thick mesh nets, but since there are few big fish, we have reduced the size of the mesh. This job does not provide enough for survival. We use fishing materials on loan, which we slowly pay off at a high price, and unfortunately, the price of fish does not seem to stop dropping. I have 2 wives. My first wife is called Bama Nabo, and we have 2 children. My second wife is called Bama Kone, and we have 5 children. My children, nieces, and nephews help us to fish. None of them have gone to school. I teach them the Quran and Arabic, which is all they need.
Modern progress in Niger is very slow, but inexorable. The Bozos are the anchorage to the traditional world on the river, unarmed people before the avalanche of progress. The Peul people of Niger, on the contrary, have adapted easier to the challenges of modernity. The Peul people have historically been nomadic cattle breeders in Western Africa. More than 6,000 individuals scattered between Senegal and Chad, always in search of new pastures in order to feed their animals. The drought in the 70s and 80s decimated the Peuls more than any other group of the many who inhabit Niger. Thousands of heads of livestock died, and many of those who survived felt obligated to opt for a sedentary life on the banks of the river. In the 19th century, the Peul of the Niger Basin underwent another wave of sedentary life, although that time it was for religious reasons. The so-called Massina Empire, headed by the chiefs of the Peul, asserted their authority over the local populations by killing and burning them. The Islamic flag flew in a territory that was traditionally animist, governed by the genies of the river that little by little came to share with a foreign god their power over the men who inhabited the waters. The Peul settled in stable towns, but continued to live off cattle and to trade with other groups that shared the river with them. Because the Niger has always been an authentic natural frontier, an inevitable meeting point among Bozo fishermen, Bambara farmers, and Peul shepherds. On the banks, in the markets that are held daily in any of the towns, many people come to trade products in a symbiosis of centuries that not even progress has been able to void. The bar dining room area is located on top of the boat. It is a reserved area, so only first-class passengers can enter. Fanta is there with 2 medical students who are returning with their families to Timbuktu at the end of the semester.
How did everything go at the university?
Well, there were a lot of problems. The same as other years, you know. People go on strike every chance they can.
But why? What is the reason? I thought that medical students usually went to school. You took exams, right?
Yes, at school we took our exams. Our demands were satisfied, and we had no other choice but to go back to class. The students went on strike because the working conditions were so bad. There were no classroom materials, and the scholarships arrive late, if they ever arrive at all.
Yes, the same thing happens at my college. To begin with, we have 4,000 students sharing small classrooms, and the professors do not always show up. Between student strikes and the absence of the professors, we haven't had even half of the classes. The system needs to change, not only the school.
Alazan Aba is an elected member of the National Assembly in the city of Gundam. He is returning to his hometown after having participated in a special parliamentary session.
I think that our political situation is going well. We have acquired a high level of democracy. Anyone who knows what the country was like before 1991, compared to how things are today, will know that I'm telling the truth. Freedom of expression is something that no one can deny. Like the spreading of the radio stations known as free radios. They are everywhere, in Bamako, as well as in the interior of the country. Then we have the case of women. Of the representation of women at all levels of government. In any job today, there are women. This shows that things are going well. I don't agree with turning my back on certain practices, the traditional ones. I'm going to tell you a story. One morning, I saw a woman who was about to mutilate the genitals of a little girl, and I said to her, "Don't you know that this practice is archaic?" She responded by saying that it was a woman's business and that men should not get involved.
Mahamadou Maiga is a lieutenant colonel in the Mali Air Force and the High Commissioner of the Timbuktu region. He is coming from Bamako with his family, who just enjoyed spending their vacation in the capital.
Everyone knows that Timbuktu is a mystical city, but few people know about the difficulties that people go through to survive there. The main problem is isolation, which stops many development programs, but even more importantly, the water problem. The channels of the river do not reach the city anymore, and it is more difficult to obtain potable water for humans as well as for the animals. It may surprise you to learn that the women's associations of Timbuktu, are the ones that are carrying out the projects in the fight against the advancing sands.
The Kankan Musa slowly moves on, with an appetite open to the scorching breeze of the desert, which takes over the landscape inch by inch. Timbuktu is close, and its presence is not uncertain, as it was for the feverish European minds that in the 19th century considered the mysterious city, alongside the source of the Nile, to be the last great secret to be discovered in Africa. the African Society of Paris offered 10 million francs to the first European to visit and bring back news about Timbuktu. René Caillet, leaving from the Atlantic, and Alexander Gordon Lang, leaving from the Mediterranean, started the journey almost at the same time. Lang arrived first, but upon returning, he was attacked by bandits who killed him. And Caillet, a man of humble descent, made his goal 2 years later, on April 20th, 1828. He made it back to tell about it. He was rewarded the money and began telling his story with a very disappointing statement that has lived on to today. He said, "Timbuktu is completely contrary to a luxurious city overflowing with gold." And so the splendor of Timbuktu, then an oasis on the shores of the Niger, was only experienced during the 16th and 17th centuries. Gold, salt, fabrics, and slaves were traded in impressive amounts. Although according to journalists at that time, these were not the most valued products, but rather books were. Books brought from Berber that were used by the imams and al-faqirs who flooded the city.
The mission of this center is primarily to collect, exploit, conserve, and disseminate the ancient manuscripts.
En vue de la réécriture de l'histoire africaine à partir des sources écrites.
This center was established by UNESCO in order to conserve the ancient manuscripts of the Niger area. At present, we have classified 15,000 manuscripts, but we also have 100,000 copies that drink from all the fountains of knowledge: music, economics, Islamic sciences, poetry, and Arabic literature. We correspond in Arabic with dealers located in Timbuktu and others in the Maghreb. There is important information about the price of merchandise, slaves, gold, and paper. Especially paper, that at that time was a deeply desired merchandise. Around the 16th century, in Timbuktu, there were about 250,000 inhabitants, and 1/4 of them were students that used gazelle skin parchment.
Khalil Touré is one of the leaders of the Arma community of Timbuktu. The Arma people are descendants of an army originally from the Spanish city of Granada, who under the service of the King of Morocco invaded Niger at the end of the 16th century. Since then, they have been the true aristocrats of Timbuktu.
The city of Timbuktu, after many droughts, is facing many difficulties, and we could say that its survival is at risk. It is suffering due to the lack of transportation and to isolation. It is the most isolated region in the Republic of Mali. If there were means of transportation, if there were highways, the economy would reestablish itself, and we could maybe say Timbuktu would survive another century. Now we only have one plane that comes a few times a week, and the river barges. This is the only kind of trading that we can carry out. But we are fighting, putting some projects into practice in order to recuperate water and reinforce the roads, fighting so that Timbuktu does not die.
Centuries before, This austere and neglected market was the greatest trade center for hundreds of kilometers around. Until the 12th century, the place that today occupies the city was nothing more than one of the many wells scattered throughout the desert that the Tuaregs would use. In the desert, the wells have been drying up, and the sand is taking possession of the decrepit walls like an assassin of mystery. If there ever were secrets to be kept, they have also been devoured by the sand. But then these women are here, eternally installed on the shores of disaster, constantly spreading hope. Only they grant permanence to a universe adrift. The women of Sahel, the traders of Niger, are the true genies of the river.